Don't forget to like and subscribe to follow good stories. I'm sorry, Vicente. A girl's voice echoed through the stillness of the night. Many people lay dead around them. Under the tree, her trembling voice spoke again. I'm so sorry. Tears streamed down her face, the weight of helplessness and self-blame enveloping her. It's my fault that you're hurt. In front of her was a young man named Vicente, his skin pale, his hair golden, and his eyes a distinctive shade of violet. He was gasping for breath, exhausted, with blood smeared all over his body. The young man lifted his blood-stained hand to touch the girl's cheek and spoke softly. I'm just glad that you're unharmed. I'm all right, Elena. As he spoke, Vicente used his remaining strength to press his forehead against hers, silently pleading with her not to cry. His gentle voice whispered in her ear, if it's to protect you, I'd gladly. With those final words, Vicente breathed his last in Elena's arms. Throw away her life. Elena was now trapped in a dark room. She awoke from the nightmare once again, clutching her head and breathing heavily. Since being imprisoned in this dreadful western tower, she had the same dream every night, a dream of Prince Vicente, the one she had betrayed in the past. At that moment, the door to her room opened, and light poured in, revealing the silhouette of a man approaching. It was the man from her dreams, Vicente, the man who had saved her time and time again. When Elena was 8 years old, she and Prince Vicente had been betrothed to one another. Though her father had arranged the engagement, he would soon have it annulled. Crash! A glass was hurled and shattered beside Elena, along with her father's voice, filled with rage. Have you forgotten my warning not to irritate the crown prince? You were born to become empress, Elena. Do you dare defy your father's will? Marquis Castalla, Elena's ambitious father, shouted furiously. In fear and anxiety, Elena muttered softly, but father, I had little choice. Her voice trembled, revealing her deep fear of her father's oppression. Elena continued, because Prince Castro always attempts to make inappropriate contact with me whenever we're together. At this, her father paused, turning his back to her and replying, I see. Then I suppose there was no way around it. In any case, ensure that your chastity is guarded. If Castro loses his status as the crown prince, you'll have to marry the third prince. Upon hearing this, Elena was stunned, unable to believe her ears. Father? But isn't the prince still a child? The man's sinister and cruel nature began to show as he responded. Indeed, he's just under the age of 10. However, the emperor has been behaving rather unusually lately. He's been favoring the third prince as if he intends to pass the throne to him. The prince may be young, Elena, but he's a man nonetheless. Elena was startled by her father's cruel reasoning. Seducing him should be no difficult task for you, since you've already seduced 2 of the other princes. In her innocence, Elena believed that Vicente would always be her fiancé. However, as soon as Vicente fell in the line of succession, her father offered her to Castro, the newly appointed crown prince. Up until now, she had endured all kinds of insults and violence from Castro. Thinking about it made her body waver, and she gripped the hem of her dress tightly, trying to hold herself together. Yet now, he wants me to seduce a child who has barely turned 9. Just how much longer must I endure this? Lost in her own thoughts, tears had started falling without her noticing, and her complexion had turned pale. How much deeper must I fall? Will someone ever extend a saving hand to me and free me from this bottomless pit? Returning to the present, Vicente had stepped forward and now stood before Elena. He extended his hand toward her in her astonishment. Are you all right? When the girl in front of him remained silent, Vicente called out, Lady Elena? With a sigh, Elena spoke. I'm surprised you'd still call me that. I'd rather you simply referred to me by my name, Vicente. Still sitting on the cold floor, hugging herself, Elena asked Vicente, what brings you here? Have you come to ridicule me since I haven't died yet? Vicente fell into deep thought, unsure how to respond to her question. Elena continued, I'm surprised to see you here. You would have needed to get the priest's permission to enter. Suddenly, Vicente spoke. I heard you tried to end your own life. Elena was clearly taken aback by his response. She wondered, end my own life? The only reason I was locked up was because my father, in his desperation, crossed the line. I'm told that House Castalla attempted to conspire against the throne. She recalled the emperor's words. Though your house is more than deserving of complete ruin, the founding emperor agreed to a certain pact, one where he'd ensure the continuation of the empire's 6 founding houses, no matter what. Therefore, you alone shall be spared, Elena de Castalla. However, you'll forever be locked up in the Western Tower, and you won't be allowed to bear any sons. If the records state you refuse to have offspring, even the deity will be unable to save your house." Suddenly, Elena stood up. She thought to herself, "Ever since that day, I was forced to take medicine that would ruin my womb while also enduring Castro's violence." She recalled Castro's disgusting words, "Don't be scared, Elena. Others may not forgive him, but I shall forgive your father of his sins. Just keep taking the medicine, then I'll save you." Returning to reality, Elena asked Vicente, "So that's what the outside world believes, huh?" "Don't worry. It's impossible to harm myself here. There's always a physician on guard keeping an eye on me." She glanced at the sword by Vicente's side and added, "Unless someone were to infiltrate this place and harm me, there's no chance." Hearing this, Vicente moved closer to her. "Elena, did you?" Before he could finish his sentence, Elena, with tears welling up, pressed her hand to her chest, pleading with Vicente. Then she ran towards him, clasping both of his hands tightly, her eyes filled with desperation. "Please, kill me." Her request struck like lightning, leaving Vicente stunned, unable to believe what he was hearing. Elena continued, "And free me from this terrible suffering. This is something only you can do. Please, save me." As she spoke, Elena reached for Vicente's sword, but he was quicker, grabbing her hand in surprise. "You want me to kill you?" Vicente looked at her, filled with sorrow, his voice laced with scorn. "Do you know how ridiculous that request sounds? Listen, I've come to give you two options." Elena, confused, barely had time to react before Vicente continued, "Run. My men are waiting for you downstairs. I'm sure they're more than capable of escorting you somewhere safe." Upon hearing this, Elena hastily refused. "No, I can't. My servants' lives depend on me. If I escape, they won't be spared." Vicente looked at her, baffled. Elena went on, "Even if I ended my life right now, it would make no difference. You said there were two choices, right? I don't think I need to ask what the other one is. Vicente, if it's truly your desire to help me, I want you to kill me." She asked Vicente, her words seeming more and more unhinged, causing Vicente's expression to darken. Yet Elena pressed on, "I'm tired of taking advantage of others, and I don't wish to be taken advantage of anymore." Suddenly, Vicente placed a glass vial in her hand, gripping it tightly, his eyes full of sorrow. "It's poison. Drink it, and your sense of pain will begin to numb. From there, your heart and breathing will slowly come to a halt, and it won't hurt. Upon your death, it'll likely spread that I was the one who killed you." For some reason, tears continued to fall from Elena's eyes. She stared at the vial filled with purple liquid in her hand, then smiled with a strange sense of happiness and thanked Vicente. At that moment, she didn't care why he was helping her, whether out of pity or a desire to hinder Castro. It didn't matter. He alone could get away with killing me. Therefore, he was the only one who could save me from this suffering. Without hesitation, she poured the entire contents of the vial into her mouth in front of Vicente. As the glass vial fell to the floor, blood began to trickle from Elena's mouth. Seeing this, Vicente rushed to catch her. Elena looked up at Vicente, her tear-filled eyes shining with joy, and she called his name. "Vicente, I doubt you can understand just how happy I am right now, since you alone saved me. I doubt I'd be able to repay this favor even if I were reborn. So I pray that you'll live a happy life in my stead." Before she could finish speaking, Elena collapsed entirely into Vicente's arms. Deep in her heart, Elena wished for Vicente's happiness with every last breath she took. After all, he had saved her from her suffering through his kindness, and with that, it should have been the end for her. Yes, everything should have ended there. And yet, she lived to see another day. Elena woke up in a strange place, inside the body of an orphan girl in a foreign country. Kingdom of Britannia, Benedict Monastery. Suddenly, a girl asked, "Are you heading downtown today, Evelyn?" Gripping the straps of her backpack tightly, Elena, now in Evelyn's body, replied, "Yes. You see, there's somewhere I need to be." The nun, holding a pile of clothes, smiled warmly at Evelyn and responded, Is that so? It isn't because Carter asked you on a date, is it?" Hearing this shocking question, Evelyn's eyes widened in surprise. She didn't know how to respond, but the nun laughed and added, "Just kidding. Will you be back by dinner?" "Yes, Sister Tilly. Please look after Cora for me until then, Evelyn replied. Leaving the house, Elena, in her new identity, walked along the street. The language and culture of this town had once seemed so foreign to Elena. She never thought she would ever grow accustomed to this face. At first, she believed it was just a dream, but it had already been 2 years since Elena woke up as Evelyn. She didn't understand why she was in this body, but the future was unpredictable. And so, for the sake of the real Evelyn, who might one day return, Elena had to maintain the image of Evelyn Benedict. Lost in thought as she walked, she found herself arriving at the library without realizing it. Seeing a man carrying a box of goods, Evelyn smiled brightly. Hello, Bomber. I've brought the manuscript of the translated text. The man set down the box and thanked Evelyn. Thank you. I'll give you your pay right now. But before that, there's someone who wants to meet you, Evelyn. Surprised by this information, Evelyn couldn't believe her ears and asked, Pardon? Bomber began to explain. The lady over there was very impressed by your work. Nearby stood a woman with purple hair, dressed in a black gown and wearing a mask, holding a book in her hand. At that moment, Bomber continued, so much so, in fact, that she wanted to talk with you. Hearing this, Evelyn panicked. Bomber, you promised you wouldn't tell anyone about me. Bomber placed a hand on Evelyn's shoulder and said, Well, I did, but this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I hope you understand this is all for your sake, Evelyn. With that, Bomber gently pushed Evelyn towards the mysterious woman despite her reluctance and then closed the door. Letting out a deep sigh, Evelyn spoke, Madam, may I ask why you have come? The woman looked amused. Have a seat, Evelyn. Evelyn was startled and shocked by her voice. The Imperial Tongue. Espadian, the Imperial Tongue, is the language spoken in the Espada Empire, where I lived all my life as Crown Princess Elena de Castalla. Since Evelyn is Britannian, she has no connection to Espada. So why is this woman speaking the language of my motherland to me? Seemingly unaware of Evelyn's surprise, the woman asked, You're the one who translated Solitude, correct? Not only is this text a challenging read, it's filled with jokes familiar only to the Empire's nobility. Hearing this, Evelyn felt nervous and uneasy. The woman continued, Yet you, a girl who has never left Britannia, managed to translate it entirely in just a week. Evelyn wondered how much she had heard from Bomber. Avoiding direct eye contact with the woman, Evelyn replied hesitantly, All I did was produce a shoddy translation of the text by consulting a dictionary. Closing the book, the woman dismissed Evelyn's answer, leaving her astonished. I doubt that. Solitude isn't a text one can just shoddily translate. However, I won't press you further. After all, I didn't come here to question you but to make you an offer. The woman made her proposal, her purple eyes staring firmly at Evelyn. You see, I'm searching for a maid who can serve closely by the side of Espada's second prince. Evelyn was startled by her words. The second prince she mentioned. Could it be Vicente? The woman stood up and continued. Indeed, he's the prince who broke the founding emperor's pact and was then locked up in Ponferrada Palace. I'm looking for a foreigner who's willing to keep an eye on him for me. Hearing this, Evelyn pressed her lips tightly together. I need someone to infiltrate the palace while pretending they cannot speak the imperial tongue. I wish to be privy to the prince's every move and word, even the contents of the maid's frivolous conversations. And what if I'm not interested in such an offer? Evelyn retorted. The woman turned to look at her, placing a hand on Evelyn's shoulder. Evelyn, the reason you took on translation work in secret is because of your sickly sister, right? Wouldn't it be wise of you to accept an opportunity when it presents itself to you, especially for your sister's sake? You're a smart girl, Evelyn. I'll give you 3 days, so think carefully. If it's in your best interest to refuse my offer. With that thinly veiled threat, she finished her words and closed the door behind her as she left, leaving Evelyn alone on the sofa. Letting out a long sigh, Evelyn thought to herself, once I gave up on being Elena, I intentionally ignored all news concerning the Empire. And because of that, I wasn't aware that Vicente had even been locked up. It never crossed my mind that the late emperor's eldest son would ever be subjected to such punishment. I believe the current emperor wouldn't touch Vicente because he felt guilty for stealing his cousin's fiancé. However, while I was living my life at ease under that childish assumption, Vicente's noble life had already been ruined. Evelyn trembled at the thought. And it's all because I asked him to kill me. Regardless, I have to pull myself together. On the cover of the book, there was a small note left behind with the message, be at Meyer Square 3 days later at the same time. Panicking, Evelyn grabbed her book and bag, ready to leave as she worried for Cora's safety. The woman who had come today already knew her weakness from the start. Running home in a panic, Evelyn burst through the door, breathless. Cora, who was sitting in the room, looked up at Evelyn and asked with concern, "Are you all right?" Sister Tilly looked after me. "Oh, and I took my medicine already." Evelyn knelt in front of her little sister. What a relief. Cora, confused, asked, "What's wrong?" Cora was Evelyn's only sister. She meant so much to Evelyn that I felt affection for her, even while I was struggling with my own identity. In fact, it was Cora who made me realize the duty ingrained in this body. Moreover, I also learned the love of a family for the first time through her. Instead of being swayed by that woman's suspicious offer, it might be safer for me to reject it altogether. If I continue looking after Cora while living quietly here at the monastery, I doubt I'll ever be in any danger. However, even if I choose to live a peaceful life of joy and happiness, full of tears and laughter, my memories of Vicente will forever be embedded within me like thorns, stabbing deeply into my heart as if they were sharp needles. Evelyn and Cora's safety is important to me. However, I just can't bear the thought of him living such a life after sacrificing his own to save me. Thinking this, Evelyn embraced Cora tightly. "Cora, there's something I'd like to ask you. Would it be okay with you if I went to Espada in 3 days for work?" She would use that time to save Vicente. After speaking with Cora, Evelyn began packing for the trip. While she was preparing, a voice spoke up. "I heard you're headed to Espada, Evelyn." Startled, Evelyn called out the name, "Carter." The young man hurried over, looking flustered. "Don't try to make excuses. I've already heard everything from Sister Tilly. I don't blame you for trying to earn money for Cora's medicine." As he said this, Carter suddenly stepped closer, startling Evelyn. "However, I can't believe you didn't even think to seek my advice at all." With that, he grabbed Evelyn's hand tightly. His face moved closer to hers as he continued, "Besides, you wouldn't even have to worry about money if you just married me." At this point, Evelyn avoided his gaze, unsure of what to say next. After a moment of silence, Evelyn finally spoke. "You know I can't do that." Carter and Evelyn were once in a relationship. That is, until Carter's father, the mayor of this town, forced them to separate by threatening Evelyn. Returning to Carter, he was now deeply afraid that Evelyn would leave, so he tried to convince her, "Don't worry. I promise I'll persuade my father." Evelyn shook Carter's hand off and contradicted him. "The mayor isn't one to be easily persuaded, Carter. You know that better than anyone else, don't you?" Suddenly, Carter hugged Evelyn tightly from behind. "I haven't even tried yet. I'm sure he'll understand if I show him just how serious I am about you." Carter's voice gradually turned into a plea. "So please stop pushing me away, Evelyn. Let's get married as soon as you return." Elena in Evelyn's body felt truly conflicted and thought, "I've always felt a sense of guilt whenever I face Carter. On top of stealing Evelyn's name, life, and family, it felt as if I had even stolen her man. However, since I'm only borrowing Evelyn's body, I don't have any right to deny Carter." Thinking this, Evelyn replied to Carter, "If you really do manage to win his approval, I'll think about it." Just hearing that made Carter's expression brighten, and he held Evelyn's hand tightly. "Goodness, Evelyn. You've no idea how glad I am to hear that." Carter was overjoyed, but Evelyn's feelings were far from it. Her heart was filled with turmoil. Even if Evelyn were never to return, marrying Carter would be no different from my arranged marriage with Castro. Besides, if love is so blind that he can't even tell I'm not Evelyn, perhaps love is nothing significant. Evelyn smiled brightly, promising to see Carter again after she returned. The next day, snow fell from the sky as the carriage carrying Evelyn arrived in front of a castle. The guard at the gate asked what business they had there. The coachman answered, "I've brought the foreigner girl meant to work at this palace. I'll have you know it was a struggle bringing her here since she doesn't speak the imperial tongue." As this was happening, the guard slowly approached the carriage and asked, "I suppose it's the girl from Britannia, right?" The door swung open, the wind rushing in, and the man glanced at Evelyn. "She seems to match the description." Suddenly, he whispered, "Go inside. I'm sure you have a job to do." As he spoke, he handed Evelyn a slip of paper. She gently unfolded the paper. "Be warned, Evelyn. Though there are others working for me at Ponferrada Palace, you mustn't give any of them your full trust. At the palace, everyone can be seen as prisoners. Everything from entering and exiting the palace, to even just sending a letter, will be scrutinized and restricted. Once you've gotten inside the palace, look for Maria. She'll show you what to do in the palace. But keep this in mind. Anything beyond that is your responsibility. If you want enough money to look after your little sister, you must find a way inside the second prince's office. From there, all you have to do is find evidence of his intent to commit treason. After reading the note, Evelyn burned it. The carriage entered the city, and Evelyn stepped down. 2 maids were already waiting for her there. One of them spoke up. "You're Evelyn Benedict, correct?" Surprised, Evelyn responded. "Pardon?" The 2 girls sighed. Looks like it's true that she doesn't speak the imperial tongue. One of them grabbed Evelyn's hand and dragged her along, saying, "Hurry up and follow me. Lord Antonio, the steward, wants to see you." A well-dressed man holding a stack of documents sat across from Evelyn. He was Viscount Antonio, the Lord Steward. He greeted Evelyn politely. "It's nice to meet you, Evelyn." Evelyn placed her hand on her chest and bowed in response. "The pleasure is mine, Lord Antonio." The man looked at her sternly and said, "I see that your work experience and personal history are immaculate, and this recommendation letter is quite impressive. You know, it takes a few days by sea to come from Britannia to Espada. I'm curious how you managed to come from such a long distance without knowing the imperial tongue." Hearing this, Evelyn pulled out a small notebook from her bag. "Oh, I actually received help from one of the nuns for this trip." She spoke a little bit of Espadian. Lord Antonio responded, "Is that so?" Opening the notebook, Evelyn glanced over it before replying, I'm afraid I didn't understand that, my lord." Looking at the paper in her hand, Evelyn panicked internally. "I let my guard down. Since we were conversing in fluent Britannian, I was close to reacting to his Espadian without thinking." Evelyn started to sweat as she sat before the man. At that moment, he spoke again. "Is it really true that you don't speak the imperial tongue at all?" Placing the notebook and the paper on the table, Evelyn responded, "Yes, lord. Though I've memorized a few prayers written in Tachian, I don't know any Espadian." Hearing this, the man waved his hand to the servant and ordered, "I suppose we'll see about that." Then, turning to Evelyn, he said, "Give me that notebook. From now on, use these cards instead. You should be able to communicate with the others by using those." The servant brought the cards to Evelyn, and Lord Antonio continued explaining. They're cards with basic words written in both Espadian and Britannian. As Evelyn received the cards, she noticed that most of them were normal, but some had incorrect floor numbers or directions written on them. It was likely a test for Evelyn. After examining the stack of cards, she stole a glance at the man across from her. As annoying as this is, it's something I just have to go through, Evelyn thought. She knew she had to play along until she could prove her usefulness. Once she finished, Evelyn spoke. "Thank you for your thoughtfulness." At this point, Lord Antonio gave an order to the servant. "Take Evelyn to the West Hall. Show her to her room and look after her until she becomes accustomed to her duties." The servant, having received the order, invited Evelyn to follow her. Just as they were about to leave, the man spoke again. "All right, follow her, Evelyn. Regarding your belongings, you should find them in your room." Evelyn forced a smile, nodded, and thanked him. As they walked down the hallway, the servant asked Evelyn, "You can only speak Britannian, right?" "I'm the opposite. I can only speak the imperial tongue." "Right. I suppose you didn't understand a word of that." At this point, Evelyn suddenly stopped in front of a painting of Vicente. It turns out he was really here. The madam had asked her to find evidence of his intent to commit treason, but that's not why she was here. Her true mission was to eliminate any evidence that might suggest such intent, all while keeping up the facade of obedience toward the madam. The servant's voice snapped Evelyn back to reality. "Follow me. This is our chance since no one's around." The servant grabbed Evelyn's hand and forcefully dragged her along, leaving Evelyn bewildered. She still didn't understand what was going on with this servant. "Hey, what's the matter with you?" The door to a room opened, and the maid quickly covered Evelyn's mouth, signaling her to stay quiet. "Don't be alarmed. I'm Maria. I've told you who I am, so I hope it's clear I'm not a threat. I'll remove my hand now. Don't make any loud noises." Evelyn spoke. "You're the one who's supposed to be helping me?" Maria sighed. "I really meant it when I said I couldn't speak Britannian. Use Espadian when you're with me. However, since everyone here speaks the imperial tongue by default, be careful to only do so with me." Evelyn thanked her for the advice. At that moment, Maria took out a measuring tape and measured Evelyn's shoulders. After finishing, she turned her back and said, "I'm only doing what I was told to." Moving forward, We'll meet inside this storage room every Saturday at AM. Maria was rummaging through something when Evelyn spoke. Even when I don't have anything to report? Maria responded, of course. After all, I'll be your only way of communicating with the madam from now on. As for your uniform, I'll deliver it to you as soon as it's made. Lastly, take this with you. Maria handed Evelyn a dagger wrapped in cloth. Evelyn was startled when she saw the dagger. As she unwrapped the cloth, she asked, Maria, why are you giving me a dagger? In the room she had been assigned, sitting on her bed, Evelyn examined the dagger. In the end, Maria didn't tell her why she had given her this weapon. Evelyn recalled Maria's words from earlier. One piece of advice. When in doubt, go where the money is. If you complete this job, you'll be able to pay for your sister's medicine. Evelyn, don't forget that you have to be a good sister. Evelyn's next action was to strap the dagger to her thigh. She looked out the window at the snow falling heavily and once again fell into deep thought. The reality that I'm in this palace is sinking in, and I can feel my stomach turning with guilt. Because of me, Vicente has been locked up in this dreadful place for a crime he didn't even commit. Even now, I'm not sure if it was the right decision to come here. However, all I wish is that Vicente can become the slightest bit happier instead of finding himself in life-threatening danger. The next morning, in a certain room, some maids were cleaning and chatting. One girl spoke up. I don't understand why we have to clean the West Hall. No one ever visits this place. So what's the point of cleaning an area that's reserved for nobles? The blonde girl kept rambling when the blue-haired girl interrupted her. Wait, there's someone over there. She didn't hear us, did she? In the distance, a girl was standing by the window, cleaning the glass. The blonde girl waved it off. Don't worry about her. She's a foreigner, so she doesn't speak any Espadian. You know what? This is actually good timing, Evelyn. She called out loudly, waving at Evelyn. There's something I need you to do, so show me the cards. The cards. Go up one floor and clean there. Okay. Hearing this, Evelyn nodded. The blue-haired girl spoke up. I know a little Britannian, and I think some of her cards were translated wrong. The blonde girl replied, well, even if she didn't understand, just leave her be. After all, Lord Antonio said not to baby her too much. I think he's trying to test her. Evelyn carried her bucket of water up to the first floor. As she walked, she sighed. I expected this kind of hassle from the start. If it's to earn everyone's trust, I'll gladly run in circles for as long as I have to. Once she reached the first floor, she noticed a room that should have been locked, but now the door was slightly ajar. After looking around for a moment, Evelyn recalled the woman's words. She then picked up her bucket and approached the door. The madam seems convinced that Vicente is hiding something. If there really is any evidence, I must get rid of it, she thought as she opened the door and looked around. She was surprised that the room was so dark. She had hoped someone would be inside, but the room was pitch black, completely empty. She supposed that was to be expected. It's not like this is the fourth floor, where Vicente stays, Evelyn thought, assuming she was overthinking things. Just as she decided to search quickly and leave, she bumped into the edge of a desk, where some papers were scattered. There were documents for a hefty loan. This isn't an amount one would borrow with innocent intentions, which must mean it's a loan to raise an army. Vicente always offered the imperial family his loyalty and marched on the front lines to avoid the emperor's suspicion. Is he truly preparing to commit treason? Suddenly, Vicente appeared behind Evelyn, his voice full of warning. You're the new maid. Startled, Evelyn quickly turned around, spilling the bucket of water, which splashed across the floor. Vicente spoke. You seem to enjoy waltzing into rooms you have no business being in, he whispered into Evelyn's ear. She glanced behind her and realized it was Vicente's voice. Holding Evelyn's hands firmly, Vicente growled, Answer me. On whose orders have you come here? Evelyn knew that meeting Vicente here at the palace was inevitable. However, she had never imagined their encounter would happen like this. It's too late to offer him any excuses, but if I speak in Espadian right now. Just then, Vicente pushed her against the wall. She knew that if she were to speak, she'd be tortured in every possible way until she revealed who sent her here. Vicente spoke. I'm afraid silence won't help you. As he said this, he turned her face to see her more clearly. Being pressed against the wall made Evelyn uncomfortable, and she begged Vicente to let her go. After all, she couldn't tell him she was Elena. After all, she doubted he'd believe her if she told him she was reborn into this body. And besides, once she helped him reclaim his former glory, She didn't intend to appear before him ever again. Vicente scoffed. I see. They're even resorting to tricks like this now. Evelyn was shocked because the man before her seemed entirely different from the Vicente she once knew. Vicente used to be a thoroughly noble and mild-mannered person, but now, he gives off the impression of someone cold and violent. Suddenly, Vicente's hand slipped under Evelyn's dress, along her thigh, and found the dagger she had hidden there. Evelyn panicked. What are you doing? Let go of me. When Vicente grabbed the dagger, he wasn't surprised. A dagger, huh? He pulled it out. I wonder if you'd still have that innocent look on your face after plunging this blade into my neck. As he spoke, he placed the dagger in Evelyn's hand and continued, I've freed you as you wished, so go ahead. Do what you initially planned to do. I'm curious how you intended to harm me with that dainty physique of yours. He took hold of Evelyn's hand, still clutching the dagger. At that moment, Evelyn realized how dangerous Vicente had become. She didn't want to do this, but there seemed to be no other way to escape. Suddenly, Evelyn screamed at the top of her lungs, pulling her hand away from Vicente. Help, Maria. I'm over here. Please come right now. There's a pervert here. Hearing the call, Maria rushed into the room. Evelyn, I was looking for you. What are you even doing here? And why did you scream like -T that point? She noticed the man standing beside Evelyn and immediately bowed respectfully. Your Highness. Vicente turned to her and asked who she was. Maria introduced herself. I'm Maria Montes, Your Highness. Did she perhaps do something to disrespect you? As he listened, Vicente glanced at Evelyn. Maria quickly bowed and apologized. Please allow me to apologize on her behalf. She's a newcomer assigned to work in the West Hall starting today. However, she's from Britannia, so she doesn't speak the imperial tongue. Since she isn't able to communicate properly, I gave her a weapon for self-defense, just in case. I hope you understand that I wasn't expecting her to cause this kind of ruckus, Your Highness. Though Vicente listened to the explanation, he still seemed suspicious. Everything about this woman bothers me, from her brooding, solemn face to the fact that she seemed surprised, as if she knew who I was. That alone is strange enough. But her dark brown hair and bluish gray eyes, it's pathetic. But I can't help but be reminded of Elena. It's obvious why they sent someone like this girl here. I feel sick at the gall of it. After thinking this, he turned his back and asked, Maria, was it? Take her with you. Yes, Your Highness, Maria responded. Vicente continued, whether or not she's truly a foreigner who can't speak the imperial tongue is something I will decide for myself. In another room, Lord Antonio held Evelyn's resume and reported to Vicente, Your Highness, I've looked through the documents as you commanded, but there's little chance that the girl is connected to Castro. Do you have a reason for your suspicions? Antonio asked. Vicente responded, a reason, huh? 10 years. That's how long I've lived in solitude after my father's passing, losing my position as the crown prince to Castro when my mother entered the monastery, and Elena left me. I was left alone with no one by my side. Even Anthony, whom I once truly trusted, pledged his loyalty to Castro, and on the paper was written, Please don't worry, Your Highness, Prince Vicente doesn't suspect a thing. Vicente asked Antonio, well, you're the one who hired her, aren't you? Lord Antonio replied, Your Highness, are you perhaps? Vicente smiled and answered, I'm just worried that you might get dragged into some kind of trouble. She has such a clean record that I can't help but be suspicious of her. If she ends up being someone dangerous, you'll be the first to be investigated since you hired her. You're my only remaining family, Antonio. Then Vicente stood up, warning him, I hope you'll allow me to look after you. Lord Antonio quickly responded, Of course, Your Highness. Vicente fell into deep thought again. That woman isn't the only one I'm suspicious of. There's not a single person in this palace that I can trust. He then spoke again. I'm sure that's a good enough reason, don't you think? Tell that maid that, starting tomorrow, she's to bring me my tea. Will Elena be able to deceive Vicente while in Evelyn's body? How will their relationship develop? Don't forget to like and subscribe to Reven Review to catch the next part of the manhwa Please Save Me. After hearing Vicente's request, Lord Antonio spoke up. Do you intend to allow her inside your office, Your Highness? Vicente remained silent, letting Antonio finish his point. It should be more than enough for me to keep an eye on her. I'm afraid I don't see any reason. Before he could finish, Vicente interrupted him. Does it bother you that she enters a room that even you cannot freely enter? As he spoke, he placed his hand on Antonio's shoulder, making him fearful. Why, Your Highness? That's not what I meant. At this, Vicente patted Antonio on the shoulder. There's no need for concern. There's just something I want to confirm for myself, since, as you say, it's unlikely she's connected to the crown prince. With that, the prince left the lord in the room and stepped outside. Walking through the hallway, he began to think about Evelyn Benedict. She seemed to understand what I was saying, but there's no evidence of her learning Espadian in the past. However, if she found a way to secretly learn the imperial tongue, she'd make an excellent spy. I don't doubt that she has no connection to Castro. After all, if he had known about her, instead of being here, she would have been inside the crown prince's bedroom, simply because she bears a terribly close resemblance to Elena. Thinking of this, Vicente took out a blood-stained handkerchief from the drawer. Clenching it tightly, he thought, in any case, this is something I can use to my advantage. After all, if she's my weakness, then that makes her Castro's weakness as well. Suddenly, Vicente let out a mocking laugh. It seems this time, luck is on my side. Flashing back to the past, there was a time when Elena was still young and once had a fever. A woman placed her hand on Elena's forehead. Your fever is getting worse, Lady Elena. I think it'd be best to cancel your class today. I'll go tell the Marquis about this. So please, before she could finish, Elena sat up. No, father will be upset if you tell him that. Besides, he might think I'm feigning sickness. Elena was startled when the woman insisted on her taking the medicine. In that case, please take this medicine and rest. Today's morning class will be starting late, my lady. Elena struggled, not wanting to take the medicine. The woman still tried to put the spoonful of medicine into her mouth. I saw the wheel of the carriage get stuck in the mud. This elderly woman was Hilda Lundgren. She was my nanny and was like a mother to Elena. She had the ability to hear and see what others couldn't, though the only person who believed her was probably Elena. Elena always felt more secure whenever Hilda was by her side while sleeping. Back then, Hilda held Elena's hand and felt heartbroken. Ah, my poor lady, it may be difficult, my lady, but you must endure it and continue enduring it. Your fate is intertwined with a strong kind of destiny. At the end of your struggle, your life will begin anew, unknown to anyone, in a foreign place, and with a new body. Then came a knock on the door and a loud call. Evelyn. Elena woke up from that dream. Maria's voice echoed outside the door. Hurry up and come out. Lord Antonio's looking for you. After changing her clothes before Evelyn could ask anything, Maria pulled her along hurriedly. Spare me that foreign gibberish. It seems to be something urgent. So hurry and follow me. I swear I won't forgive you if I get in trouble because of you. Evelyn's face was full of thoughts. Maria's attitude has completely changed after what happened yesterday. Is it because I acted on my own? Or does she begrudge me for some personal reason? Normally, her attitude would have upset me, but my mind is in disarray because of that dream about Hilda. What was it that she told me? I don't know why I only remembered this now, but if my memory is correct, I must seek her out in secret. Before Evelyn knew it, Maria had dragged her to the main hall. Lord Antonio was already there waiting. Evelyn Benedict. Evelyn bowed in response to his greeting. Good morning, Lord Antonio. I heard you were in a rush looking for me. Antonio, addressing Evelyn, told her he had a task for her. Hearing this, the three maids gathered together, whispering to each other. Then, Lord Antonio continued, starting from today, you shall be responsible for serving Prince Vicente his tea. Evelyn was shocked upon hearing this task. She would have to bring tea to Vicente twice a day. At PM and PM, the three maids whispered among themselves. Did you hear that? Looks like the prince has taken a liking to her. Maria chimed in. The prince himself appointed that duty to her, huh? She doesn't even speak Espadian, yet she's somehow found a way to bewitch him. What a vile woman. Taking on this task, Evelyn was not pleased at all. Getting insulted right to my face is something I expected. After all, I'm a foreigner who isn't supposed to know the imperial tongue. What worries me right now is the fact that he deliberately chose me even though I made the worst first impression. It's as if he's goading me to leak his information. Lord Antonio's question pulled Evelyn out of her thoughts. Are you listening, Evelyn? She immediately apologized. Apologies, my lord. What were you saying? Antonio took a key from his hand and handed it to Evelyn. Take this. It's a key to His Highness's office. There are only 3 copies of that key. The prince and I each have one, and you're currently holding the third. It'd be in your best interest to be cautious with your conduct. Evelyn replied, I shall take your warning to heart, my lord. At that moment, Vicente appeared on the stairs. Lord Antonio thought to himself, perhaps it's better this way. I may be subjected to more direct scrutiny, but I've gained quick access to Vicente's office with this. He glanced at Vicente. The faster I am, the sooner the madam will let her guard down and trust my loyalty without second thought. She's sure to blindly gobble down whatever information I feed her. If the rumors regarding me and Vicente don't get worse, Suddenly, Antonio placed his hand on Evelyn's shoulder. Evelyn Benedict, is there something you've been hiding from me? Evelyn was stunned, turning to look at him amid the wary gazes of the three maids. Evelyn answered, "Forgive me, my lord, but could you repeat that again for me in Britannian?" Hearing this, he glanced at the prince and then warned Evelyn, "Keep this in mind, Evelyn. If you had hesitated to answer my question for even a second longer, you would have lost your head by now." Leaving the room, Evelyn was so terrified that she could barely walk. She had to lean against the hallway walls to steady herself. Stopping there, she thought to herself, "I thought I'd finally earned a little trust. I didn't expect to be threatened so blatantly like this." Besides, the rumor Maria spread, there are bound to be several rumors about me circulating. There are countless eyes and ears inside this place, and each person has their own master. They answer to. With all the attention focused on me right now, I mustn't let anyone see me shaken up like this. Suddenly, a man approached her asking, "Are you all right? You don't look very well." "Oh, you must be the maid who came over from Britannia." Seeing that she still didn't respond, he switched to Britannian. "Are you all right? Did I say it right?" Hearing this, Evelyn took out the cards that Antonio had given her from her pocket. Looking at this man, she thought, if there's a silver lining in all of this, it's that this situation won't last very long. The frequency may have lessened with his banishment, but Vicente is a soldier who has always guided his knights on the front lines. As she thought, she handed those cards to the man. While Castro indulged himself in all kinds of vices, Vicente was accomplishing many things, and that naturally made his name well known. Not only that, but there are still some who back the former emperor. I doubt the current emperor will be able to keep this up forever. Vicente will one day return to his rightful place. So, until then, I must get rid of any suspicious documents while only leaking information that will do Vicente the least amount of harm. I'll do everything I can. Evelyn grasped the key in her pocket tightly, then took it out and placed a kiss on it. She was determined to do everything to protect Vicente. 10 days later, at Ponferrada Palace, a red-haired knight blocked Evelyn's path on the stairs. Forget it. Why do we even bother? In Evelyn's hands was a teapot for Vicente. The knight continued, "What's the point in questioning her every day? It's not like she can speak the imperial tongue." This man was Dante, Vicente's aide-de-camp. At this point, Lucas, who was standing next to him, spoke up. "It should be fine to just let her in since the captain is the one who told us to." Meanwhile, the two knights continued to stare at Evelyn. Suddenly Lucas spoke. "Can't you see that she can't get by because of your bulk, Dante?" Hearing Lucas, Dante scratched his head apologetically. Evelyn never imagined they could be this easygoing. She advanced towards the room when Dante continued, "Lucas, I honestly don't know what our liege is thinking at all. He's never allowed a maid to enter the 4th floor. So why, out of everyone, did he pick someone who looks like her?" Evelyn was slightly surprised by Danny's words, but she still stepped into the room. The dark room was empty. "It feels as dreary as always. This place is already so cold." Evelyn placed the tea on the table. This room gave her the feeling of an abandoned prison. Suddenly, she noticed a slightly open drawer. Oh, one of the drawers is slightly open. Perhaps Vicente forgot to close it? I remember joining one of Vicente's classes when we were still children. The teacher once said, when the need arises, there are 2 ways to drag someone you don't trust into a plan. The first is to force them by getting a hold of their weakness. The second is to bind them to the same fate as your own. Evelyn believed that was his strategy class. From a young age, Vicente had been considered an outstanding student. This must be a trap he set up to test me. He probably placed some important-looking documents too. Although she thought this, her curiosity got the better of her. She opened the drawer to find her personal file and a blood-stained handkerchief. Suddenly, Vicente stepped into the room. "What are you looking at, Evelyn?" In his hand, he was holding a wine glass. Vicente slowly approached and continued, "Have you frozen in place?" Without answering, Evelyn pretended not to understand what he was saying and responded in Britannian, "Your Highness." Without replying, he continued speaking in his own language. "The tea's gone cold." He then picked up the teacup and brought it to Evelyn's lips. "Drink it." Vicente smiled. "How's it taste?" Alright, you can't speak the imperial tongue yet. After tasting the tea, Evelyn covered her mouth and thought to herself, there's a strong scent of brandy on his breath. His Highness is still unable to sleep without his alcohol and medicine. Thinking of this, she turned around to take the teapot away and said, since the tea has gotten cold, I'll go prepare more. She left seemingly calm, but her breathing had become rapid and unsteady. It wasn't just my imagination. It's my fault that Vicente cried that day. It's my fault that he has fallen this low. Evelyn had secretly taken that blood-stained handkerchief. Vicente, I thought you wouldn't mind killing me. I believed I didn't mean anything to you anymore. It was raining heavily outside, and Vicente quietly leaned against the window frame, sipping his wine. Returning to her room, Maria was already there. So, how did it go, Evelyn? Did you manage to find anything? Evelyn answered, I'm afraid not, Maria. In Maria's hands was a stack of some documents. She continued, I'm surprised. It's already been 10 days since you started doing these tea duties, right? The madam's having doubts, Evelyn. She keeps asking if you actually have any intention of stealing the requested information. Evelyn nervously explained, but you know Prince Vicente isn't a careless man, Maria. He always stores his papers safely inside his drawers. In reality, he had displayed them openly as if provoking Evelyn. However, Maria had no way to verify whether Evelyn was telling the truth. After all, Evelyn was the only maid allowed inside his office. Evelyn said to Maria, it seems that I've yet to earn his trust. Maria didn't seem pleased with Evelyn's response. She stepped closer to Evelyn and said, whatever it may be, it means you haven't made any progress. She pointed her finger at Evelyn and continued, I don't feel the slightest bit of remorse for spreading the rumor that you seduced the prince. Evelyn didn't understand why Maria mentioned that or what she was trying to do. Maria's voice still grumbled. Everyone here came out of desperation, Evelyn. There are plenty of people with debts and sickly family members. She trembled as she spoke. As for me, I really wasn't like this in the beginning. I didn't intend to develop any feelings for Prince Vicente, but he's just too beautiful. It's as if he was chiseled by the deity's own hands. And sometimes when I see him, it feels like the devil is whispering in my ears. Maria suddenly became emotional. She used both hands to hold her head and spoke in a frantic tone. Evelyn came over to comfort Maria, advising her to calm down. Suddenly, Maria regained her composure and said, a guest is scheduled to visit the palace tomorrow. Evelyn asked, a guest? But hasn't the prince been banished? Maria replied, have you forgotten the reason for his banishment? It's because he killed the crown prince's woman. Obviously, the supposed guest is being sent here by the crown prince to find information on Prince Vicente. You know, at times I find myself envying that woman because she left behind such a huge scar on the prince. Anyway, the madam requested that you plant these inside His Highness's office. Evelyn asked Maria what they were. Maria replied, who knows? They're probably some kind of false evidence. As she spoke, she ripped up the pieces of paper and threw them aside, leaving Evelyn bewildered. Maria seemed to have lost her mind. She grabbed Evelyn tightly and said, I have a proposal, Evelyn. Forget about these scraps of paper. She then took something out of her pocket and handed it to Evelyn, and slipped this poison into the prince's tea tomorrow. If you don't, I will tell the madam that you turned on her in favor of the prince. Evelyn was now faced with two options. Option 1, if the madam's fake evidence is discovered, Vicente will be blamed for trying to commit treason. Option 2, however, if poison is found in Vicente's tea, it will be possible to warn him of danger, and all attention will be focused on me. Not to mention, the members of the imperial family are resistant to curare, the poison Maria handed me. Curare was probably chosen since Vicente won't be harmed by drinking it, and he'd recognize the poison from its strange taste. It doesn't matter if I do what Maria asks or not. The madam will be suspicious of me since the evidence wasn't planted. As for Vicente, he will never trust me again for attempting to murder him. Don't be afraid, Evelyn. From the beginning, there was only one choice. Evelyn knocked on the door before bringing in the tea. Inside the room, Vicente was talking to another man. Hearing the knock, Vicente said to the man, looks like a maid has brought us tea. I may be a banished man, but it would be rude of me not to serve tea to a commander. Vicente allowed Evelyn to enter. The man was shocked upon seeing Evelyn. Your Highness, this woman? Quite the resemblance, no? Doesn't she remind you of Elena? Yes, to a surprising degree. It seems I might have surprised you with what I said. There's no need to worry. Vicente interrupted him. I'm afraid you're the one who doesn't need to worry. You see, Evelyn doesn't speak Espadian. Well, at least for now. With that, Vicente glanced at Evelyn. She held the teapot with trembling hands. Noticing this, Vicente thought to himself, disappointing. I thought she might be of some use with a little training. However, she's visibly trembling while serving such suspicious-smelling tea. Seeing as she was ordered to do something so blatantly dangerous, the person behind her must have forsaken her, though she doesn't seem to be aware of that. Vicente then spoke to the man again. We should continue our conversa. Before he could finish, Evelyn placed 3 cards on the table. Vicente didn't understand what she meant. Suddenly, Evelyn brought the cup of tea to her lips and took a sip, much to Vicente's horror. What do you think you're doing? The cup shattered. The man rushed over to inspect the teapot. My goodness, this must be curare. At that moment, blood had already begun to flow from Evelyn's mouth. Vicente spoke urgently. Being a commoner, she wouldn't have any resistance to it, yet she drank the whole cup. Evelyn gasped for breath, looking at Vicente. In this moment, she suddenly blurted out, Vicente, bring me the physician. Vicente ordered urgently. The man, puzzled, reminded him, but Your Highness, rules dictate that the palace's physician is to only serve members of the imperial family. Vicente snapped. Someone just collapsed, drinking poison that was meant for me. You aren't trying to suggest that some blasted rule is more important than a person's life, are you? The man hurriedly responded. And no, not at all. I shall go bring the physician at once, Your Highness. At this point, Vicente held Evelyn in his arms. Her pale face, the shaky breathing, and the way she looked at me. I get it now. Was it all a plea to save her life? Evelyn was laid on a bed. A voice spoke up. Given the circumstances, the girl must have been contacted by the one who ordered her to poison the tea. You must treat her as an important witness, Your Highness. Vicente was visibly annoyed. She saved my life, didn't she? Is there more I need to compromise on? I don't mean to diminish what she did, but she possessed the poison that was meant to kill you. Frankly, it's quite suspicious that she even thought to approach you with it. The man replied. Antonio spoke up. I'm sure she realized too late, and she wouldn't have known how to warn me. Vicente sneered. You aren't trying to suggest that the girl is a fool who'd willingly pour poison into her mouth, are you? Antonio continued. Whatever the case, Your Highness, I'm afraid allowing her access to your bedroom is too much. I advise that you move her to a cell or to a room in the maid's living. Before he could finish, Vicente cast a stern gaze and said, There's a criminal on the loose inside the palace who's trying to kill me. Don't you fear she might be killed if she's moved to a less secure location? I won't accept any further input on this matter. Commander, I also ask that you keep silent about this. The man with green hair replied, But Your Highness, this incident threatened the safety of a member of the imperial family. Even if you ask me to keep silent, I'm afraid I'm unable to avoid reporting on this situation. Vicente countered. The emperor gave me his word on a certain matter. In a few months, I'll be reinstated to my military duties. As such, I'd hate to cause any unnecessary trouble. However, if you insist on making a report, I ask that you wait until Evelyn regains her health. To be honest, Vicente didn't care whether the man remained silent or babbled on about it. After all, the more he tried to hide something, the more they believed he was concealing the truth. It was just like how everyone was fixated on the 4th floor, trying to uncover some non-existent secret. Vicente continued, The imperial interrogation is a difficult thing to endure, even in the best of health. The girl is already weak as it is. I hope you won't make her strain herself further. As he spoke, Vicente sat down next to Evelyn. The two men exchanged glances. The man with green hair covered his mouth and cleared his throat. Understood, Your Highness. The door closed, and Vicente's voice echoed, Good. You may take your leave now. Now, alone in the room with Evelyn, Vicente wondered what she was thinking. She had hidden all the evidence he had deliberately left out in the open for her. And now, she had drunk the poison meant for him. It was as if she was willing to throw her life away to protect him. But Vicente still didn't understand why she was doing this. There was no special bond between them, and that was precisely the problem. Vicente truly did not understand her motives. In her dream, someone called out Elena's name. Elena de Castalla. You aren't going to be this absent-minded in front of the crown prince, are you? In her dream, Elena quickly apologized to her father. I apologize, father. I must have been distracted. Her father sternly replied. Get it together. Don't forget how much money I've poured into your debutante party and remember that I raised you all this time for a reason. Elena calmly responded, "Yes, father." Her father continued, "You haven't forgotten what I told you in the past, right? Humor the crown prince, and if the opportunity arises, charm the third prince as well." A servant announced, "Marquis Castalla and Lady Elena have arrived." Her father whispered a reminder, "Stay alert and keep smiling, Elena. And if the crown prince asks you to be intimate, you are to decline no matter what. You'll become the empress one day, so your conduct must be free from suspicion. Men are all the same, Elena. Young or old, every man wants a woman who indulges him. Once you've spent enough time in the hall, head to the palace library. You should find the third prince there. You can start by approaching him under the pretense of looking after him as his sister-in-law. Then, slowly open up his heart by acting like a friend. Never forget that you were born to be an empress, Elena. Am I clear?" Elena obediently replied, "I shall do as you wish, father." Her father was satisfied with her response. "Good. That's what I like to hear. You must grab the chances when they present themselves. If you aren't able to do that, you'll end up like that fool. I offered you to him thinking he'd become emperor, but look at how he has barely held onto his prince title." Suddenly, a man approached and greeted them, Marquis Castalla. "I see you've arrived." "Ah, Duke Andrade. It's been a long time, your grace." As people started paying attention to her father, Elena thought it was time to leave. Suddenly, everyone surrounded Elena, greeting her, "Lady Elena." There you were. Not wanting to be in this atmosphere, Elena excused herself to go outside. Once the party began, the crown prince would start moving around freely, even without her father's command. Imagining being alone with the crown prince was suffocating. Elena had escaped to the garden, hoping that no one would find her there. A servant had handed her this wine glass on her way out. Elena thought perhaps she should take a sip of wine tonight. Suddenly, a voice called out, "Lady Elena." It was Vicente. He appeared to be slightly tipsy. Elena bowed gently to Vicente. "Your Highness." She didn't know what he was doing here. He was still inside the hall when she last saw him before coming out here. Vicente approached Elena. She glanced at him and thought, "It makes sense he found me quickly since I'm sure he knows the palace shortcuts better than I do. However, I don't understand why he chased after me in such a hurry, and he's been looking at me like someone who just experienced something terrible." Elena smiled and began to speak. "I heard you recently returned to the capital after the battle in Yellow Groans. Congratulations. I heard you distinguished yourself during that fight." Vicente was startled and thanked Elena. She continued, "If you have anything to say, Your Highness, may I?" Before she could finish, Vicente cut her off. "Congratulations on your coming of age, Lady Elena." Elena was surprised. Did he follow me out in such a hurry just to congratulate me on my coming of age? And so clumsily at that. Standing in front of Elena, Vicente resembled a young boy. Elena found him rather amusing. She suddenly asked Vicente, "You didn't bring me a gift?" Vicente's face turned red like a tomato as he stammered, "Oh well, how about this? I'm afraid I already have a glass." Then, Vicente switched the two wine glasses he held with Elena's. "Well, if I do this, it'd be the same as giving you my glass, wouldn't it?" Elena replied cheerfully, "Clever, but you took my glass as you gave me yours, didn't you?" Vicente chuckled softly and responded, "Then let's say that we exchange gifts." Elena shyly brought the glass of wine to her lips as she thought, impressive. It's been so long since I last had a conversation like this. Talking to him makes me feel as if I've become like all the other noble daughters. As she thought about this, a memory resurfaced. Her father once scolded her. Don't you know that you're different from those other noble daughters? Remembering this, Elena spoke up. You needn't talk so formally with me, Your Highness. I don't believe I'm deserving of such kind treatment. Vicente leaned in closer to her face and replied, but you're to become Empress one day, aren't you? Their glasses clinked together, and Elena gave a forced smile. Haha, I'm still just the daughter of a marquis right now. Vicente's response left her stunned. So you say, but all of Espada knows that your father is intent on making you Empress no matter what? In this society, the mistakes of one's household could reflect on them. Moreover, the annulment of her betrothal to Vicente was a one-sided decision by House Castalla. It must have been quite humiliating for Vicente. And yet, there was nothing negative in his gaze. If anything, he looked rather tired. Realizing how close they were standing, Elena turned around and said, I think it's about time I return to the party. Allow me to escort you back. I know my way around the palace, so it's alright. By the way, I take it you aren't fond of champagne? You haven't taken a single sip even though you brought it all the way out here. Vicente replied, well, I'm simply not in the mood for it right now. Placing his hand over his chest as a gesture of farewell, he continued, please feel free to head back if you're in a hurry. I think I'll take a little stroll. Elena responded politely to his farewell. Then I shall take my leave, Your Highness. Ending their conversation, Vicente hoped Elena would enjoy the party tonight. Elena felt something strange. What's this sense of déjà vu I've been feeling since meeting Vicente? Just as Vicente was about to turn away, Elena called out, excuse me, Your Highness. Didn't we have a similar conversation in the past? I remember you doing something like this for me. No, it wasn't in the past. It was. At this point, Elena suddenly woke up in Evelyn's body. Looking around at this unfamiliar room, she wondered where she was. Just a few moments ago, I was in a fancy party hall in the palace garden, she sighed. All of her memories were gradually returning. She suddenly realized, Maria, the poison, Vicente, Evelyn. Elena trembled, realizing she was still alive. Just as she had predicted, Vicente had not completely turned his eyes away from her. At that moment, Vicente appeared out of nowhere and placed his hand on her shoulder. You should stay in bed. You've been asleep for 2 whole days, so you'll strain your body if you stand up now. Looking at Vicente, Elena thought, maybe it's because I saw him in my dream just now, but it feels so surreal seeing Vicente in front of me. I'm certain he's still the same wonderful person. Vicente's voice cut through her thoughts. Since things have come to this, why don't the two of us have an open discussion? Who is the person that ordered you to do this? Give me the name of the one who handed you the poison. As he spoke, he lifted Evelyn's chin, and spare me your shoddy acting, Evelyn Benedict. Will Vicente recognize Elena in Evelyn's body? Like and subscribe to follow chapter 3 of the manhwa. Please save me on the Reven review channel.